Is the new Vivid Coil a simple rebadge from the Super Deluxe, or is it all new for the ride or the trail? So all my tune boys out there, we got a C1 tune. So I picked this shock up at jensenusa.com because I could not find a used one. And it's a 230x65 with a C1 tune badge. So I have a secret surprise for you. I'm going to be using a loaner bike and we're going to finally solve this tune business. Let's unbox this beast. So it comes in a eco-friendly packaging with no plastic. Inside of it, I'm like, what in the hell is all over this shock? So when it was shipping from China, it was basically rattling around and getting a whole bunch of cardboard transferred onto the shock. This isn't a big deal, you just spray it off. So when we look at this new Vivid Coil, it feels precisely the same as the Super Deluxe Coil. There's absolutely no exterior change except for a Vivid badge that's in black and white instead of saying Super Deluxe. Rockshox has been using DU bushings since the 40s and it maintains the same DU bushings into 2025. Now I was reading some comments from a long time ago, and you need to be careful with the adjusters on these shocks. You can snap the high-speed compression adjuster off very easily, so know where you're turning it. So this piggyback is the touchdown technology, so let's put it on the $10,000 dyno and see if the marketing holds true. Damper activation pressure will tell you a lot about a shock, but it won't tell you everything. So when I push the Vivid Coil down, the first 10-15 millimeters of travel only takes about 30 pounds of pressure. So this is super impressive for straight off the top. Now it's only like 10 or 15, basically how much you see right there, where it's 20 pounds of pressure. And that's kind of the sag area of the shock, so I don't know how that's going to affect it on the trail. Once we go deeper into the travel, it goes to about 45 pounds. And then when we get to mid-stroke, it basically breaks the scale. Very similar to the Super Deluxe. So now it's time to put it on the bike, and cleaning off all that cardboard transfer is not hard. All you have to do is spray the shock off, and it's basically brand new again. So my goal is to give you practical, useful information, and all the review channels will say it's amazing, go buy it. So it is very simple. It has sag indicators, climb switch, 4 clicks of high and low speed compression, hydraulic bottom out, and probably my favorite, the spring says 65mm stroke. So we have 4 clicks of high and low speed compression, but you need to understand it has a massive range. So if you add 1 click of high, add 1 click of low, or the shock will feel like trash. If you don't have the rebound, at least in the middle, it'll feel like trash. It'll feel dud, slow, dead. So when it comes to the hydraulic bottom out, that's purely dependent on how progressive your bike is. So I'm going to be running this loaner Levo with a long stroke cascade kit, and I'm basically going to solve this tune business that all the commenters have been whining about. I am not the most diplomatic person, so I'm naming the Vivid Coil the Band-Aid damper, kind of like Buttercups. Basically, they discontinued the Super Deluxe Ultimate in less than 2 years and came out with this guy. So let's shoot for 3 years on this one, woo woo. And I'm gonna put all my Super Deluxe Ultimate coil settings into the Vivid Coil and see if it works. So just so you know, the long stroke cascade link for the Levo has a 98mm long yoke, so technically it's not approved to ride from Rockshox. Now this bike is super progressive, so it should be okay. So if you have a 65mm Rockshox coil, you can only have a 72mm long yoke. So Specialized Status has a 71mm long yoke, so it sneaks in there. And I've rode the Super Deluxe coil on the Status, and it's an excellent shock for that bike because of the hydraulic bottom out and the climb switch. Now, I'm a little bit lazy, so I didn't put it on the Status. But here's one note. Rockshox uses super wide springs, so MRP, DVO, Fox, basically no springs fit on Rockshox because they're so wide. So you're like spring decks and Rockshox, and that's about it. Since the Levo is the most popular e-bike in the world, basically I'll tell you how this goes. It's kind of a pain in the ass to transfer the hardware because you have to hammer it out blind. If you have the long link cascade link, It's a super tight fit. I don't know if they designed it to be that tight, but it's kind of a pain in the ass to mount up a new shock. So you're probably not changing shocks every 3 days, so this isn't a huge deal, but for me, it's kind of a pain. Let's do the small bump sensitivity check on the Vivid Coil touchdown technology, aka Band-Aid damper. Now I don't have much to complain about here. It looks like they added in small bump sensitivity, and it's about time. So maybe Rockshox engineers were watching my crude videos, or people were complaining, or they're just trying to FOMO you into the next shock.
Who knows?
Let's talk about some positive things with the Rockshox. So setting sag with sag indicators is a really good experience. Like, you can actually get 30% sag confidently and quickly without much fuss or friends helping you. So if you have a Zeb on the front of your bike, the Vivid Coil is an excellent match, coming at you with the hindsight. So I ride a lot of mixed suspension, and sometimes when you have Fox in the front, Rockshox, DVO, whatever, mix up, it can be pretty challenging. The damping theory between the Vivid Coil and the Rockshox Zeb makes setting the whole system up much easier.
Okay, I'm on the Loner Levo. It's a little bit different feel. It's like a lot shorter of a reach, even though it's size extra large. And I was kind of lazy to change the pedals, so flat pedals. So the Vivid Coil, I have the exact same settings as the Super Deluxe a couple weeks ago. Mid compression, mid, high, and low speed compression, and 11 clicks of rebound. So right away, the Vivid definitely feels like a better damper. It's kind of like soft throughout the stroke. It doesn't have that choked up feeling that the old Rockshox did. Come on, Steve.
While cautiously taking my time on this new bike and new coil shock, I found the Vivid Coil performance to be very similar to the Super Deluxe, except for there's one key difference this time around. The standard trail riding experience is excellent compared to the Super Deluxe and any other product that Rockshox has made before. So this shock is not choked up into its travel, giving you small bump sensitivity, isolating you from the trail like no Rockshox product before. But that's not the real key difference this time around. So I'm riding a specialized Levo with that silver link back there, holding the shock in place. It effectively makes the bike more progressive, harder to bottom out. So remember, this is a Vivid C1 tune, but this bike is more progressive than anything Specialized has ever made, at 33 or 35%, effectively making this shock amazing. Not because of the tune, because of the bike's leverage rate being more progressive, because I'm a heavy rider who likes to clap it out on blue flow trails. So really the shock tune is not as important as the suspension kinematics. So the Cascade component, the silver link back there, has made this the best coil shock experience I have literally ever had. Now, I could just go buy a Levo and this link, or buy this bike from my friend, but I've decided I'm gonna buy an actually progressive bike from this ride. So let me give you the good with the bad, because it's a completely unsponsored video and I don't want to be a sellout. So, the Rockshox uses an IFP inside the piggyback. So IFPs are definitely having a slower response time, making jibbing, jumping, popping off things not quite as effective. Now, it's not as handicapped as a Fox DHX, but it's definitely not as good as a DVO when it comes to popping and jibbing and flowing. But the Rockshox is an excellent shock for your trail bike because of the hydraulic bottom out and the lockout switch. After like an hour and a half, I was completely dialed on this bike, so I went full send for my C+ riding skills. So really the bike's suspension kinematic is keeping this bike up in its travel and more composed. And it is definitely a pretty impressive coil shock. All dampers are getting so good in 2025, it's hard to go wrong, except for a Fox DHX. So I'm putting the Vivid Coil into the upper middle class of performance. But there is one massive benefit to being upper middle class. There's not much adjustment period because it's not going to feel completely foreign. Now the top end performance, the high speed damping, how the oil feels when it's slamming back and forth inside of the shock is not going to be as good as Öhlins, DVO, EXT, etc. But If you don't want to do a whole bunch of setup and adjustment period, the Super Deluxe and the Vivid Coil are pretty awesome. I honestly wouldn't run out to replace my Super Deluxe Coil if you had the one that looks like this, because they feel pretty similar. Really, the bike suspension kinematic is the real upgrade here. So click this video to get the secret on how to set up your Super Deluxe and Vivid Coil.